This is Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We had a chance this week to speak with one of our favorite leaders, Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. We're going to play you that interview, and then we'll talk about it for a few minutes. We're speaking with Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Thank you, Senator. Welcome, and just really appreciate you taking time for us today.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
We wanted to speak with you about your recent Terminating Bailouts for Taxpayer Fairness Act. You and Senator David Vitter introduced a non-binding resolution last month, got 99 senators to support it. Now that this is official legislation, do you expect that same type of bipartisan support?
Well, that was sort of an easy vote for my colleagues because it really it was non-binding. It simply said that the banks, pretty much in a nutshell, the banks are too big. They get too many advantages because of their size. We've got to do something about that. The next step, actually taking on the banks when they so strongly oppose this, the large banks, not the community banks, is a much more difficult issue. But we're seeing already some pretty conservative senators, people like Senator Vitter, Senator Sessions, with whom I don't agree on much of anything, stepping up on this issue because they agree. One of the things fundamentally we agree on is that the banks in this country, the Wall Street banks, they're too big to fail. They're too complex to manage. They're too cumbersome to manage. They're too complex to regulate, and they pose a threat because they pose both a political and an economic threat to this country because of their political and their economic power.
Yeah, your legislation requires something that it seems so obvious to me, that banks actually have 15% at least capital on hand so they don't get into this situation to require a taxpayer bailout. How on earth did we ever get into a situation where banks didn't have to have that on hand? Banks
used to be run more conservatively. I mean, they used to say banking was kind of boring when they gave traditional banking activities. But where there wasn't huge risk if you paid attention to your loan portfolio. Today, because of these Wall Street traders, and the word traders in this case is used with a D, traders, these Wall Street traders took a lot more risk. There's incentive built into the system. The more risk you take because of high leveraging, the more benefits, the more profit you'll make, the more revenues you'll bring in, the more profits you'll make, the bigger your bonus will be. So there is a built-in incentive for banks to be risked, for these bankers on Wall Street, these traders to be to engage in risky behavior. So when things go well, they make a lot of money, and when things go badly, well, that's usually taxpayers that have to pick up the slack there. So that's in a nutshell really what we cannot let happen again.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it seems like Wall Street is pretty clear. The banks and the big businesses are doing just fine. For the safety of taxpayers, for the safety of this country, do you think we will ever be able to return banking to that boring industry that it used to be, that safe industry?
Well, I think you'll see it sort of segmented, that part of traditional, we'll continue to have traditional banking, but the answer is we need to make sure that traditional banking gets the benefits of a system that works for them, in the sense that, I'm not saying that very well, in the sense that we have a safety net for traditional banking. If you deposit $5,000 in your local bank, a big bank, small bank, whatever, that the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation has built a safety net, so if something happens to that bank, you get your money back. As long as they're engaging in traditional banking, that safety net should be in place. It's when they don't, and when they're engaging in buying and selling, trading derivatives and credit default swaps, and involved in some of the securities, the new financial instruments that not many people understand, including sometimes people trading them, that the risk, that's when the government should not have any kind of a safety net for them. Once you make that sort of bifurcation, once you've divided that, things will work a lot better. And then if the people in derivatives and credit default swaps, if they lose, there's no backup. That's their problem. So they gain when they win. Their risky behavior is okay if the people taking the risk bear all the gains and losses. That's what we want to do.
Now, how do we prevent that risk from carrying over to unintended victims? You know, like the derivative scandal that entangled so many Americans that really had no idea that they were even invested in something like that.
You make sure those who take the risk suffer all the consequences. Risky behavior is much less risky when there's a downside as large as the upside. And that means withdrawing the government subsidies, the implicit government subsidies that these big banks get, because the capital markets believe these banks are too big to fail. The capital markets, it doesn't really matter what I think or what you think or what my co-sponsors in this bill think. What matters is that people that invest, the capital markets, people that loan money to these large banks, they believe there's no risk in loaning that money, so they loan it at lower interest rates than they would to a bank, to the Huntington in Columbus, Ohio, or to Fifth Third in Cincinnati, or Key Bank in Cleveland, or a community bank in Akron or in Sycamore, Ohio. So that's the real key, is that the people taking the risks, not only they get the upside, they bear all the downside, and that government withdraws the implicit subsidies that these big banks get.
Well, how can people support this bill? What can they tell their senators to make sure this bill gets out of committee and becomes reality?
Well, it's a question of, like anything online, you can come to my website, sherrodbrown.com, sign up. In support. We're working this from every angle possible in terms of organizing. People should call their senators and say that too big to fail still exists. You got to do something about it. Support the Brown-Bitter bill. It's a much simpler approach than these really complicated things. That the simple approach, as you pointed out right from the start, is capital standards, that they have to hold back some capital cushion in case something goes wrong. The public doesn't bear the problem, the brunt of it. Their bondholders do, their shareholders do, their investors do.
Well, Senator, thank you so much for getting this legislation out there and for everything you do, and especially for taking time with us today.
Sure.
We really appreciate it.
Thanks very much for what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
That was our interview with Senator Sherrod Brown, someone we admire greatly, and it was really an honor to have a few moments to speak with him. And, this is all related. This, with what Josh Silver was talking about and anti-corruption and getting money out of politics, and it even circles right back into the problems that we talked about in that immigration bill, that corporate power and money in politics and this idea that money is speech is the root of the destruction of our democracy. I really firmly believe that.
And also the fact that he's talking, Senator Brown's specifically talking about banks.
Yes.
And what we're talking about, after we talked with Josh Silver, that the original Tea Party, before it was co-opted by Freedom Works and all that, were upset about bailing out banks. Just like the people on the left, upset about bailing out banks because they got bailed out and the rest of us, nothing.
Right.
And they got more and more power. And so the thing is getting money out of politics yet another hurdle?
Of course.
To getting what Senator Brown is working on.
Right.
But we can still do it in the meantime. We can walk and chew gum.
I think so too, and I think it's interesting to point out that as really amazing leaders like Sherrod Brown are fighting to fix this problem, to make sure that we don't ever end up in a situation where we're spending another $700 billion to bail out banks that caused the problem in the first place. Some members of Congress are actively working to put us right back in that same situation, and it's mind-boggling that they would be willing to put our nation, to put their own finances at risk again. But yet, and this was something, Josh Silver mentioned, and we wanted to talk about it a little bit more, that Citigroup, one of these big banks that caused our economic collapse, is essentially writing legislation, is pushing House members to support repealing the very minimal protections that the Dodd-Frank has been able to implement so far and preventing further protections from coming into play. Citigroup wrote about 70 lines of a 85-line House bill. Their recommendations were essentially to allow more derivative tradings, to remove transparency, to put us right back into this high-stakes gambling situation that crashed our economy. And it just goes to show why that when we do have efforts like Senator Brown's and Senator David Vitter's bill to...
When did you ever think you'd be saying that out?
I know. I have complimented Arizona Governor Jan Brewer and David Vitter in one show.
What is... Do you need a fainting couch? Or
I think so.
A heating pad, some medication of some form?
I think I need...
Or it's too many GMOs in your food, I think. That's what it is.
That's what it is. And we're gonna be talking about that in a little while, too.
Yeah.
It's all related. It's all intertwined. That, we have so many issues we need to deal with. Military issues, economic issues, GMOs, privacy issues. And I think if we can tackle the financial issues, it paves the way to getting all the rest of this work done. I mean, I really feel that way. Any thoughts on that, Shane?
Of course. I mean, yes, they are all intertwined, but when they're all intertwined, they also become a behemoth fighting against that. The pressure back on it gets larger as well. This is intertwined with what Senator Warren's trying to do in terms of student loans. Again, the big banks.
Yeah, but no matter how powerful they are, there's more of us than there are of them. And I think that, that word that got us so worried, bipartisan, if we can form a bipartisan effort, if we can get the majority of people to support this, we can overcome. We have more power than sometimes it feels like. We're going to be getting into so many more issues, and we don't have that much time left in the show. We knew we'd
like
never...
I said, it's going to be the 6-hour version.
Yeah, we knew we'd never get to talk about all the issues that we wanted to, but we have more in store. So you're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out. We Act Radio, SoFlo Radio, or downloading the podcast at TalkingLeft.com. We will be back with more, so stick around.
I'm David Schuster of Take Action News, and you're listening to my favorite show other than my own, Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
It's our last errand today, Jimmy. Just need to pick up some light bulbs.
Whoa, there's so many. Did Grandma tell you which ones to buy?
No, but check out the label on this package. It'll help us find the right bulbs.
Does it really matter?
Well, sure. The new light bulbs use a lot less energy, so we save money on our electric bill by using an energy-saving incandescent, CFL, or LED.
How about this bulb?
Let's see. We need to replace the 60-watt bulbs in our bedside lamps. That one is 800 lumens, so it should do the trick.
I've never heard of lumens.
Lumens tell us how bright the light is. The more lumens, the brighter the bulb.
Grandpa, you're a pretty bright guy.
Yeah, you're pretty smart yourself, Jimmy.
Lumens, the new way to shop for light. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. That's EnergySavers.gov. A message from the U.S. Department of Energy.
You may be hearing about people having trouble making mortgage payments and risking losing their homes. Many of them just aren't aware of the options that can prevent foreclosure. There are many options available to homeowners, such as repayment and forbearance plans, loan modifications, and even refinancing. Where does someone go for help? They should talk directly with their lender or a qualified HUD-approved counseling agency. Both can provide helpful information without charging a fee. According to PMI Mortgage Insurance Company, it's not a good idea to pay for services that you can get for free from a lender or a qualified nonprofit counseling agency. To learn more, visit homesafepmi.com or call HUD at 1-800-569-4287 for a counseling agency near you. That's 1-800-569-4287. This message is brought to you by PMI, supporting sustainable home ownership that strengthens communities.
Friends, David Schuster here, and all of us at We Act Radio are so proud of our neighbors here in Southeast D.C., especially one of our partners, the Ark. The Ark is at 1901 Mississippi Avenue Southeast. It's the home to some of Washington's best, including the Washington Ballet, the Levine School of Music, Boys and Girls Club, and the Children's Health Project. All provide a number of programs and services within the very same facility. The Ark is also home to the Ark Theater, the only theater east of the river, which hosts a variety of dance, music, and theatrical shows each year. Almost everything you could want is at the Ark, so stop by and see them. The Ark, 1901 Mississippi Avenue in Southeast, For more information, visit the ARC's website, www.thearcdc.org, or call 202-889-5901. The ARC, part of Southeast D.C.
This is Stephanie Miller.
Hi, this is Tom Harmon.
Hello, everybody. I'm David Schuster of Take Action News.
I'm Brad Friedman of BradBlog.com.
Hi, I'm cartoonist and agent provocateur P.S. Mueller.
This is Nicole Bell of CrooksandLiars.com, and this is...
You're listening to
and watching
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Great presidents aren't born, they are made. We've got to push people. They don't jump out in front of a parade if there's not a parade there. That is political suicide. The parade, metaphorically, already has to be in the streets with the picket signs saying, we need progressive talk in Portland, or we need marriage equality in Washington, or we need marijuana legalization in Colorado, you know, whatever.
The Trans-Canada Pipeline. Stop the pipeline.
We have to push for our positions because they're not just going to out of thin air.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
I think there's something in my soul. It's in the chords, and we both know. I see the...
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We wanted to tell you about a good story. We love finding good stories in the news and reminding people that, you know, there is positive stuff going on out there, despite sometimes what the news media might want you to believe.
Or how grumpy we get.
Or how grumpy we get right here on Talking Left. Good point. And this one I think is cool for many reasons, just because I'm a geek. And electric cars are cool, and especially electric cars that look really pretty and go really fast are even cooler. Tesla Motors has fully repaid government loans in the tune of $465 million, and they've done so 9 years ahead of schedule. 9 years.
Oh, I hope it's not like one of those mortgages where they can foreclose on you for paying early. I'm sorry. See, I had to bring the rainy cloud back in, but no, that's really awesome. They repaid the investment.
Yes, the government investment. Tesla is the first out of 33 green energy projects that were funded, you know, to car companies to be paid back so far. And it did so just a little early. I think it's particularly funny because, remember, this is the company Mitt Romney called a loser during the presidential debate. So not only has Tesla repaid its loan, but it currently employs over 3,000 American workers, and it's just revitalizing, completely innovating the green energy and electric car market. And the oil companies and the big oil car manufacturers are not happy about it. They are freaking out. They are vigorously drafting legislation in state after state to try and block Tesla from competing. So far, bills have been introduced in New York, Massachusetts, Minnesota, and North Carolina to try and block Tesla from selling cars there. Now, in typical Republican fashion, they're not doing so and just outright saying, you know, Tesla can't be here because they know people would be outraged and it would be ridiculous. So what they're doing is trying to ban Tesla's practice of selling cars directly from the manufacturer to a consumer. They're saying, and get this, you have to love anytime a Republican uses this phrase, they're saying that Tesla represents unfair competition between manufacturers and dealers. This is seriously laughable. This is the same party that said the whole problem is that we don't have enough competition in the marketplace and that the free hand of the market should decide, right? That's what they constantly say, that just leave it up to the market. It will decide everything. Well, apparently the market is pretty darn clear, and they like Tesla.
Yeah, no kidding.
This is just ridiculous. State Senator Tom, I think it's Apodaca of North Carolina, said that Tesla, their practice of selling directly to consumers is unfair. It's not fair. Yes.
Why is it not fair?
Because it cuts out the middleman. It cuts out the dealerships. Tesla's not a big enough car company to even use a dealership now. Last year, they sold about 20,000 vehicles.
Are they gonna outlaw used car sales from person to person now too? That cuts out dealerships.
It's a good question.
Maybe we should get rid of Overstock.com. That gets rid of retailers. I mean, this is very specific to Tesla.
It's entirely specific to Tesla.
And there are plenty of people in North Carolina who go to other states and buy cars, so they're cutting out the dealerships in North Carolina there.
Right. Well, and this measure...
Put them up on Amazon.
This measure is failing.
Of course it is.
Pretty much everywhere. In Minnesota, they tried this. It failed. Dealers in North Carolina and New York and Massachusetts tried to block Tesla there. It didn't work either. But Tesla only sells 20,000 cars a year. That's what they sold last year. Compare that to 15 million new vehicles that were sold by U.S. auto dealers. I mean, it's like a rounding error.
Right.
Obviously, they're trying to do this because they're so scared of what Tesla represents.
If Tesla were an internal combustion engine automobile, they wouldn't have a problem.
Exactly.
Bit. And by the way, I've bought a car not from a dealership that was new.
Did you?
It was from an office, and they just brought it in from the... I mean, this happens all the time.
Right. And Tesla is proving that these automakers should be worried. I mean, granted, we see this in some, Chevy's got the Chevy Volt, the Nissan Leaf. The car makers are trying to compete in this market. But go look at a picture of a Tesla and a Nissan Leaf and tell me which one you would want to drive on the weekend.
There's a significant difference in cost, too.
Of course. But it's right. Creating a luxury car market for electric vehicles.
It's also doing what the people on the right and those who are against it, they're doing what they said they can't do.
Right.
No one's going to like it. They don't want people to like these cars. They don't want people to buy them. They don't want them to be available. They don't want them to succeed. As Rush Limbaugh says, I want them to fail.
Yeah, remember the outrage they had over the Chevy Volt? Remember how much they tried to trash it, and people loved it.
Tesla was they tried to trash Tesla in one of the reviews in one of the newspapers. Did you hear about this?
I believe so.
An ombudsperson had to get into it. This just panned the car. This wasn't but a year ago or less than a year ago, and Tesla had put a little computer in the car, showing when it went at what speeds and how far and all that, and none of it lined up with the review. The reviewer lied. Flat out lied.
I wonder who they were working for.
Who knows? But so there's a concerted effort. I mean, the Wall Street Journal is absolutely against this. Read anything in there. Fox News, it's all a failure. They're miserable. They're awful. They'll never work. One has succeeded, and it scares the heck out of them.
It scares the bejesus
more than
out
one
of
them have succeeded, but they're really succeeding.
Well, this doesn't just represent what electric vehicles represent. It represents what independent American ingenuity represents, and that scares the daylights out of them.
They declared a loser ahead of time and then try to find facts to fit it. Remember, there's Mitt Romney.
Into solar and wind, to Solyndra and Fisker and Tesla and Enter1. I mean, I had a friend who said you don't just pick the winners and losers, you pick the losers.
He called Tesla a loser there. That was Mitt Romney.
I wonder what he has to say now. I would absolutely love to hear if he would refine that statement. And I would love to see Republicans out there celebrating the fact that a government loan has been paid back, the fact that 3,000 American workers have good middle-class jobs because of Tesla, and it can be a new American technology that the rest of the world will want, that we could export this again and be, technology leaders instead of followers like we have been for decades now.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah, I just, to say, I mean, seriously, for them to come out and say it's unfair competition contradicts everything that Republicans are supposed to stand for. If you say that the free market should decide and that, the government shouldn't pick winners and losers, then that means you actually have to acknowledge when one of these companies is a winner.
And also the government picks winners and losers all the time. It's called a patent.
Good point.
How many times has our government picked Monsanto the winner?
Yeah. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment.
I know, I keep going there. I keep teasing
You
this.
obviously want to talk about Monsanto, so we're going to go ahead and run to a break, and we will get into the Monsanto discussion because some news out of France shows us why we shouldn't give up hope about putting some controls on Monsanto's power. We can do it here, too. You're listening to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. Thank you wherever you're checking us out. We will be right back with more, so stick around.
There you have it. News has never been softer. It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Blending classical literature with the technology of subterranean imaging, scientists have made an astonishing discovery. Namely, there is a 10th level of hell. In the 14th century, Dante, a renowned Italian poet, detailed a horrendous descent through 9 layers of eternal damnation that he had charted, reserving the bottom floor for the most wretched of sinners. Yet, apparently in recognition of today's realities, Satan has had to add a new basement to his punishing inferno, a special level of hell to accommodate the top executives and profiteers of Walmart. Their sins are many and well documented: poverty wages, child labor, global sweatshops, cheating U.S. workers, bribing public officials, bankrupting local competitors, shoddy products, etc. In recent weeks, though, the massive chain's bosses earned their assignment to Beelzebub's basement by their abhorrent performance in Bangladesh. First came their deliberate choice to profit from their suppliers' abuses of powerless garment workers paid $37 a month. Second was their intentional turning of a blind eye to the blatantly unsafe factories they use, including the hellhole that collapsed in April, killing more than 1,100 workers. Third was their diabolically shameful denial of responsibility, claiming that the dead workers were not making clothes for Walmart on the day of the collapse. This is Jim Hightower saying, and now they have fiendishly refused to join nearly 40 other global retail giants in an agreement to help finance such minimal safety upgrades as putting fire escapes on Bangladesh's factories. Walmart executives explained that non-binding, unenforceable self-regulation would be best for all concerned. And you could hear old Lucifer cackling as he prepared their rooms in his new 10th level of hell.
If you like these feisty pops of populism that Hightower zings out on the airwaves, check out the Hightower Lowdown. Jim's monthly newsletter provides the in-depth lowdown on what the greed heads of Wall Street and the boneheads of Washington are doing to us behind the scenes. With Hightower's saucy Texas humor and truth-telling populist perspective, the lowdown literally can lift you up. And get this, you can have the lowdown delivered to your mailbox or email each month for only $15 a year. Yes, 12 issues, only $15. Check it out, hightowerlowdown.org.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a production of Diversified Media Enterprises. I'm Doug Cunningham. Kenrig Maiden is the recently elected new president of the Painters Union, the IUPAT. He says as the labor movement looks for new models of organizing workers to rebuild the labor movement, people of color are vital constituencies. Rig Maiden is in Orlando, Florida for the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists convention.
The main mission and goal of the coalition is to link strongly and maintain a strong bond between people of color and the labor movement at large. On the political front, of course, we're trying to make sure that the needs of organized labor in general meet the needs of these various constituencies.
Chicago Teachers Union President Karen Lewis says the Chicago Public Schools' decision to proceed with closing 50 schools shows that public education in Chicago has been hijacked by an unrepresentative corporate school board acting at the behest of a mayor who has no vision for improving the education of children. She said the largest number of public school closings in U.S. history is a scorched-earth policy and not a real education plan. She says the teachers' union fight in Chicago against the school closings moves now to the courts and eventually to the ballot box. Are we witnessing the end of real retirement for workers? Jesse Russell reports.
A majority of U.S. workers plan to work past retirement. A recent Gallup poll finds that 39% of those surveyed said they'll likely work past the retirement age because they won't have a choice, while 40% say they'll do so because they want to keep working. Only 19% of those surveyed by Gallup say they'll stop working at the retirement age. The number of workers saying they'll continue to work out of necessity hasn't fluctuated much since the same time in 2011. However, the majority of those who do plan on working after retirement plan to only work part-time instead of continuing full-time work. Perhaps not surprisingly, those who make less than $30,000 per year are much more likely to continue to work out of necessity beyond retirement than individuals who earn more than $75,000 per year. Although 49% of those who earn more than $75,000 per year say they'll continue to work by choice.
About 100 workers and their supporters greeted McDonald's shareholders in Chicago with a protest calling for decent wages to support families and the right to form unions without employer interference. The workers had recently participated in fast food strikes in Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, and St. Louis. The workers told McDonald's shareholders Thursday that they demand at least $15 an hour and the right to organize. This newscast made possible in part through underwriting support from the IBEW, the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, and from OPEIU, the Office and Professional Employees International Union. You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
It takes 12 years to create a graduate. It takes about the same time to create a dropout. And at the end of the day, the difference between a child becoming one or the other could be you. So United Way is asking you to make a pledge. Tutor a child who needs help. Mentor a kid who needs someone on their side. Volunteer to read to children. Because when a child advances, we all advance. Be a reader, tutor or mentor. Give, advocate, volunteer. Live United. Take the pledge now at liveunited.org. Brought to you by United Way and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shano. We talked about it last week, that there's a big march happened this weekend in D.C. and all over the world. We spoke with Adam Eidinger about the march against Monsanto. And we obviously weren't able to attend. Hopefully we can get an update for you very soon and maybe some pictures about what went on there and how the turnout was.
Send us pictures. Send us stories.
Yeah.
Let us know. If you were there, talk to you and get your account of stuff and find out what went on.
Yeah. If you have any videos or pictures, you can email them to talkingleft@gmail.com, and we'll post them on the show.
I hope that the major, networks pick up on it. I'm not thinking they may. But
I'd be very surprised to see that they covered it.
I was just glad that I'm listening to shows during the week that it's been out there, and I'm very glad. Occupy alive and well and working on a great cause.
Right. Nobody can say that they are disappearing and that Occupy is dead, because lots of people around the world this weekend proved otherwise. And hopefully we can share some of that with you guys very soon if people want to give us some. And that Occupy Monsanto is not the only group or individual working to put limitations on Monsanto. And one thing that is...
holding them accountable.
Yeah.
It's amazing. We're all supposed to be personally responsible, but they all want special laws so they're not liable, which is translated as responsible, for the stuff they do.
And that whole talking point that we were just referring to in Tesla, that people, they say, let the market decide. Well, when you remove recourse that people have against, you can't, because of the Monsanto Protection Act, you can't sue if that food hurts you. You can't compete and grow your own, because if a Monsanto seed blows into your field, well, then you're liable for a lawsuit.
Incredibly litigious.
Right.
They got lots of lawyers.
Right. I mean, without...
The libertarians always say the market is going to, if there's a bad food, if it's not, then people will find out about it and they won't buy it anymore. How do you find out about it if there's never a public trial about it? And
there's rules against labeling?
Yeah, you can't get information about it. You can't have any type of recourse. That is not a free market.
Right.
That's rigged. That's a rigged system.
That was the most infuriating part of the Monsanto Protection Act, which was slipped into the Senate funding bill, the budget that was voted on in an all-night voting session by the senators. It seemed like the majority of senators came out afterwards and said they didn't even know this provision was there.
I know. We need labeling for our bills.
Good point.
Seriously. This has been a genetically modified budget bill.
Yeah. But what it did was say that if you get sick from eating GMOs, if they find later that the food they've put out into this world is toxic or alters our genes or causes food allergies or
birth defects,
whatever, you can't sue them. That's what the Protection Act did. And one senator, Jeff Merkley, and he's gotten some support by other senators, but he specifically has introduced a bill, an amendment, to repeal the Monsanto Protection Act. He does not think they should be protected from liability if their plants do harm to the American people. he said...
And it's amazing considering the percentage of food that is Monsanto touched.
Yeah.
You know, think about it.
And it just increases more every day.
Yeah.
You can't prevent a bird from landing in a Monsanto field and then flying over to the organic field and dropping off a few seeds. You can't tell the bees not to cross-pollinate the plants. I mean, it's so difficult already for organic or even conventional farmers to keep Monsanto's products out of their field, and it's cost prohibitive because most of the seeds out there are Monsanto's.
Right, and the Monsanto seeds are a lot more expensive. We went through all that with the lawsuits.
Right. So Jeff Merkley has introduced an amendment to the Senate version of the Farm Bill that would completely repeal the Monsanto Protection Act. He said it is, quote, an outrageous example of a special interest loophole, and the provisions that the provision nullifies the actions of a court that is enforcing the law to protect farmers, the environment, and public health, and that is unacceptable.
Amen.
Yeah. So good on Jeff Merkley. I think this is really important.
The budget that it was put into was only through September, I believe. I think it was just a short term.
I think it was originally supposed to go through May, and then they stretched it to September because of the whole debt ceiling debate coming up again.
It's so hard to know what's funded to when. You automatically assume that it's going to be a couple more months before they have to have a fight about it, and so the Republicans can obstruct again. But my question is, I just don't know the answer to this. So if anyone knows the answer to this. Does the Monsanto Protection Act, is that part of the bill also die with that budget? Meaning when that budget's over, does the Monsanto Protection Act go away? Or is it permanent? Does it require this? I understand standing up and saying, we don't like this. In fact, we're going to do the reverse, and we're going to make sure that this sticks.
I would doubt that it's temporary. I mean, if it was temporary, I don't think it would get this much of an outcry. Why would he have to repeal the legislation if it was only temporary?
In the meantime.
He could just let it expire.
In the meantime.
Yeah. And the budget fight is pretty interesting considering the disputes going on in the Republican Party. But before we get to that, a great case came up. And unfortunately, it's not in the U.S. But it's a perfect example of why we need to repeal the Monsanto Protection Act. A farmer in France has won a lawsuit that said Monsanto is responsible for the negative health problems he has had from dealing with their pesticides. And I think this is a really, really big deal. It's apparently he accidentally inhaled Monsanto's Lasso weed killer formula. But, because of Monsanto's genetically modified foods, they've had to make these more and more and more and more powerful weed killers. As we were talking to Adam last week, he said that they're now considering essentially putting Agent Orange on our food supply.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, what could go wrong? Well,
I love all the Western, you have the Roundup and Lasso.
Yeah.
Next is 6-shooter.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the farmer had really lifelong neurological damage, including memory loss, headaches, and he had developed a stutter when trying to speak. It was, it's a really sad incident. Well,
just think reading that.
Yeah. He sued Monsanto, and many people, even in France, even considering, they have much stronger regulations against GMOs than we do here, did not think he would win. Monsanto's got a team of lawyers and corporate giveaway, the same problems that we see here. But he did. The French court agreed with his claims and the evidence that it considered and declared that this is Monsanto's fault. They said Monsanto is responsible for his injuries, that because they did not adequately warn him about the dangers posed by this weed killer, that they are responsible for the neurological effects he is suffering.
Now, then the next logical question is, when they put a different warning label on, the next time someone does develop this anyway, are they therefore out of it? I just, if they didn't warn him, was that really the issue?
I don't think so.
I'm sorry, but handling pesticide, duh. It's one of those things where because they didn't adequately warn him, they're liable. So if next time they adequately warn and someone still gets these terrible results from it, are they not on the hook? I don't think a warning is enough is what I'm saying.
I don't think so either. I think, the EU just banned these pesticides for 2 years because they think that they're killing off the bee supply. Sure. Maybe cases like this that are linking Monsanto to these damages will help those bans become reality in other places that will help say, no, you cannot continue to put this toxic substances on our food supply. And, when somebody gets hurt because you think that it's okay, you're going to be held responsible. But the point is, if this case was to have happened in the U.S. since that Senate bill passed, since the Monsanto Protection Act, too bad.
Would have been thrown out.
Too bad. Doesn't matter if Monsanto poured it down your throat.
Well,
too bad.
Okay. Not quite.
Not quite, but you know
dang
what
close.
I mean. Yes. Do you think that's a little too strongly worded, Shano?
I loved it.
Yes. And back to the budget issue. You know, you mentioned that this was slipped in because of an all-night vote, that they brought us to the brink of economic disaster.
Again.
Well, big surprise. It's probably going to happen again.
Duh.
Yes. But
it's amazing. Republicans don't want to go to conference. That's what the whole deal is, right?
That not just Republicans.
What?
Specific freshmen, new generation, Tea Party conservatives.
Crazy, the next generation.
Yes, like Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, Mike Lee, and Rand Paul refuse to allow the Senate to go to conference over a budget.
When they whined and moaned for 3 years, you guys don't do a budget. They won't let it go to conference, and that's the only way. That's the way the Congress works.
Right.
You get a bill in the House, get a bill in the Senate. They have differences. You work them out.
Right.
They don't want to work them out.
And it's all specifically over, they say they will not negotiate unless a budget deal can be reached that caps the government's spending ability.
But that wasn't in either bill.
Right.
So in other words, they want to change the rules.
That's exactly what they say, and it's causing some major problems in the Republican Party. John McCain, major senior...
John McCain doesn't like the new whippersnappers.
No.
These whippersnappers.
Get off my lawn.
Yeah.
Yeah. He is not pleased. Bob Corker, John McCain, people who have been there for years are essentially furious. They're saying, this isn't how the Senate operates. And I just think it's interesting.
That actually has the false assumption that they actually think the Senate should operate. People like Lee and Paul and Cruz don't like the Senate operating at all. They hate the institution itself. They don't want it to function. They hate government. And when it doesn't function, it proves their own point.
Yes, which is interesting because Rubio was asked about that specific point. And his exact quote here from the New York Times, I have tremendous respect for this institution, but I am not at all interested in the way things have always been done around here. How is it that you want to go back to our nation's founding and that we need to stick to our principles, but you don't like the way things have been done?
I have respect for the institution that I hate. Wait, how can he contradicted himself in one sentence.
Well, come on. It's Rubio. What do you expect? I wonder if he paused for a drink of water in the middle.
It wasn't in real time.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question to put out there, and it's something that we should watch for, maybe just for fun. With the birth of this Tea Party and the problems they have caused for this country and for our government, we have seen them divide Democrats and Republicans as a whole, to lump the left and the right into two groups, because they've pushed the right even farther, and some would say they've pushed the left even farther to the right, but they've been a major headache. I'm wondering now if their refusal to negotiate, their refusal to get any work done, will actually reunite some bipartisan effort here, because people are furious with them blocking work on everything.
So in other words, the old guard Republicans getting together with the Democrats?
Yeah. And just saying, we're going to get some work done.
Wasn't it just last week we were reading from the Heritage Foundation saying, don't bring up these issues because we don't want them writing about our circular firing squad going over here and the divisions within our own party.
It took less than a week.
Less than a week.
Less than a week.
I guess Rubio didn't, and Rand Paul and Ted Cruz didn't listen to the Heritage Foundation.
No, they don't listen to anybody.
The funny thing is they're really followers of the Jim DeMint, the Senate sucks. Let's tear it down line of thinking.
It's just, this country is so sick of government crisis after government crisis. This is not how things are supposed to operate. And
speaking of which, be careful
point,
this debt ceiling coming up. I think they're going to put, I really have a strong suspicion that they're actually just going to right through this one. It isn't going to be one of those last minute, we came finally to a decision, and I think they're going to go through it.
You think the Tea Party members are going to make this happen?
Yeah.
But what do they have to gain?
No, it's that government's terrible. And I think they really believe that this sequester thing was a massive victory for them.
Oh, you think the sequester was bad? If they don't pass a budget, if they if they go over this cliff that you're talking about, it is going to be even worse. Already, as of this week, 115,000 employees between the IRS, the EPA, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, the Office of Management and Budget, 115,000 of their employees were furloughed on Friday, had to stay home without pay. And things will get worse. You think it's bad now?
But we use the term worse. They see it as better. I swear to you, they see that is a good thing. Less government. I'm not saying that I agree with them. I'm just saying, so when you say it's getting worse, they will push it further because they see it as getting better.
Well, how far can they go with that before the American people say enough?
I don't know, but I believe that they will push it further.
I mean, can you recall a senator?
Yeah, that's really interesting. It depends on the state, I believe.
You know, because as much as we dislike it, I don't know that they're guilty of something worthy of impeachment. I think they would have to commit a crime, but you could recall them. Theoretically. But you think the sequester was bad? Health and education, if they go over the debt ceiling, another 19% cut. The Interior Department and EPA, another 15% cut.
Which they think is a good thing.
Right. But, I mean, at what point do the American people say enough?
There needs to be enough American people paying attention saying this is a bad thing.
Well, when you have the left and the right, like John McCain sitting here agreeing with Patty Murphy and saying these tactics need to stop, won't enough
vote
Americans?
That way. You know, that's the problem. It's easy to talk about. We just talked about the president in the first hour, about how it's easy to say these things. Now do it. Senator McCain, I don't know him that well. It's easy to bark and moan and say, get off my lawn. Vote.
Yeah.
You know.
I don't know about the inner workings of the Senate enough to know how they overcome
if you have
this,
John
but they
McCain's
need
along
to
with
do
the
it.
Democrats, you can pass a filibuster.
Yeah, if you get enough.
Logically, so therefore you would go to committee. Would you not?
Yeah.
So what barking is
they
not enough.
They can't do
voting.
this anonymous hold stuff?
They can, but then you get 60 votes.
Well, then the Republicans need to stand up and take control of their party.
Yes, or at least get enough of you peeled off to side and just put the darn thing to committee.
I think that sounds like a great idea. All right, well, we have just one more segment, and of course we have to end it with some funny stories and one that's just heartwarming. So don't go anywhere. You're listening to Talking Left. Just a few more minutes, and we will be right back. Stick around.
Everyone expected just a piece of fluff, but we wanted to do something important. You know, issue stuff.
It's Talking Left with Danielle and Shano.
Hi, this is Brad Friedman, your friendly citizen investigative blogger, journalist, troublemaker, muckraker, and all-around swell fellow from BradBlog.com. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday from 3 to 4 p.m. 1 hour of troublemaking and muckraking ripped from the pages of BradBlog.com and sometimes from the dark recesses of my mind. We'll have investigative interviews with newsmakers, we'll call out the liars, frauds, and phonies, and we'll even give kudos to the good guys if we can find any. Stories you won't hear anywhere else. We'll report on politics, elections, election reform, mainstream corporate media failure, media reform, global warming denialism, and everything before, during, and after. Join me for the Bradcast every Wednesday, now a full hour, 3 to 4 p.m., right here on Pacifica Radio's KPFK and coast to coast and around the globe on kpfk.org.
You're listening to and watching
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio.
Filter Free Radio with Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
Jacob Dean.
With Jacob Dean and Skeptical Scott.
It's a redefining of the issue of not just the fact that, oh, it's my fault, I need to go buy a Prius. I should get an electric car. No, it's my fault for not stopping car culture as a whole. We don't need cars. I should have far greater technology right now than the internal combustion engine. It's 100-year-old technology.
Where is my jetpack?
Exactly. But you get the point. The issue is far larger than just recycling or driving a hybrid. It's stopping the manufacturing of these systems, these industries. They need to stop. You know, we will never have national health care guaranteed as a right for all as long as we have insurance companies that make money off of us. So the insurance companies need to go away. We don't need insurance companies. We need health care. You know, it's the whole health insurance reform. What a lie that is, because we need health care reform. And the list goes on. So it's redefine the issue and redefine the argument.
FilterFreeRadio.com.
Would you like to secure stable employment, affordable, high-quality child care, or an opportunity to serve your community through meaningful volunteer and internship experiences? If so, UPO is the place for you. Hello, I'm Andrea Thomas, Vice President of Administration and Chief of Staff for UPO. As the Community Action Agency for Washington, D.C., UPO has proudly served the residents of Washington for the past 50 years. Annually, we impact the lives of nearly 100,000 Washingtonians, 100,000 people advancing their education, securing employment, maintaining housing stability, and investing in their communities through volunteerism. Our vision is a Washington of thriving communities and self-sufficient residents. To learn more about our services and how you can partner with us or donate, visit us at www.upo.org. UPO, where we are uniting people with opportunities.
Hi, this is Tim Cormall from The Tim Cormall Show. Join me and my guests most weeks for a progressive roundtable discussion about politics, news, and other fun topics. We laugh a lot about the hilarious antics of the right-wing nutjobs, as well as have serious discussions about issues affecting all of our lives. You can check out The Tim Cormall Show at timcormall.com, and you can subscribe to the show for free in iTunes by searching for The Tim Cormall Show. You can also follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/Tim Cormall. That's CORRIMAL. So come on over and join in the fun at timcormall.com.
Hey! Are you living in a progressive talk void? If so, be sure to visit leftwingradiosstations.com. The state-by-state listing is a quick and easy way to find any left-wing talk radio station across America, from sea to shining sea. Your progressive talk nirvana is only a click away at leftwingradiosstations.com. Be sure to like Left Wing Radio Stations on Facebook and share it with your friends. leftwingradiosstations.com. United we stand.
SoFloRadio.com remains on the air with free archives thanks to the support of our listeners. Help keep us on the air by clicking the donate button on SoFloRadio.com. And thank you for your generous support.
You're listening to Talking Left with Danielle and Shana.
Welcome back to Talking Left with me, Danielle and Shana. We wanted to end with two quick stories that we felt were funny and heartwarming. First, Anthony Weiner. He may want to double-check his...
That's funny right there.
Yeah, that's it right there. That's the story. No, he is running for mayor. And I'm sure many people have heard already that he had a bit of a mishap with his campaign rollout. Instead of featuring a beautiful picture of Brooklyn Bridge, they instead featured a picture of a bridge in Pittsburgh. Oops. So we just figured that, as far as Anthony Weiner's concerned, he got pretty lucky that was the only bad internet photo problem he had during the campaign rollout. So far. But we wish him the best.
Oh.
Why not? I don't know who else is running in the race, and either way, I still wish him luck. Whatever New York City decides.
There you go.
Good for them. And then one story was very heartwarming, and I hope I can get through it without tearing up a little bit. But we all, as a nation, are dealing with the fallout from the Boston Marathon. And the runners who ran that day didn't get to complete their marathon because of the obvious events that unfolded. And they decided to finish it anyway. They went back this Saturday, and about 3,000 runners and bombing victims gathered in the rain to complete the final mile of the marathon. And the corporate sponsors paid for all the costs and said that any extra funds would be donated to the charity to help victims. And I just think this is such a beautiful story, and it's they didn't give up. They said that they were going to go back and finish this marathon no matter what happened that day for the victims, and just to prove to the world that that's what we do as a nation. We stand up and we finish and we keep fighting. And cheers to them. And I thought that was just such an amazing story, as you could tell by me getting teary-eyed over it. But anyhow, thank you very much to our great guests, Nicole Bell of Crooks and Liars, Josh Silver of Represent Us, and of course Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Please check out TalkingLeft.com. We'll put all their links up after the show. Thanks to Nicole Sandler, to Alex Lawson, Kimon Friedman, Pete Callahan, George Rodriguez, Rocky Mountain Mike, and stay tuned for Mark Levine. He'll be coming up next on We Act Radio. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next week.